Hello everybody, and today we're going to dive in this drawing that I made that tried to visualize how my imagined desire is. I'm so sorry for my voice, but I just got a cold and I don't care, like I want to talk anyway. Okay, so let's dissect it because there's a lot to say, say the least. Okay, so let's begin from the easier concepts. So we have this little circles, which are called hypermasculinity and hyperfemininity. So it's the most basic form and stereotypical form of gender. So man as aggressive, as dominant, as stoic, as violent, like strength, and this kind of qualities, like not caring, like they don't care about anything, egoistic, and really much entitled to harm others. Like they feel like they have this right to harm others, and they feel superior, like according to some natural laws of theirs, and I despise it. I despise it. So like that will look at a different dimension, a different lens through which we can look at this diagram. But for now, let's just explain the categories. And maybe like how you can visually imagine this archetype. It's like, the really big muscular with really straight face, like they don't fear anything, but inside they're empty and they're just focused on asserting their dominance onto others because they have to be the biggest in the tribe. Otherwise, their sense of worth collapses because they're entirely constructed harming others and being superior to others. So by the time the hierarchy collapses, so does their identity. So their identity is intrinsically based on hierarchy and superiority. Great. So then we have hyperfemininity. So this can be seen as the one who buys the lullaby, the fairy tale of the Disney princesses that are saved by the prince. They're so deluded and view men as their savior, and like they constructed their sense of self around men. Like without men, they don't know who they are. Like they formed themselves against men, like only in relation to men as a category. So by the moment the category men collapses, so does their identity. So it's like those more unstable identities that literally, I think that the hyper masculine identity created itself through assertion of dominance onto the other in general, whereas the hyper femininity created itself against and in relation to this assertiveness. So it embodied everything opposite. So utter passivity, and like they also buy the story that all of this is natural and intrinsic. Like they're really essentialists. Like they really buy into essentialism. So yeah, like the hyper feminine archetype is the one that thinks that their status, no way, yeah, like their value as a person, their worth as a person is inherently constructed on male approval. So it kind of is a pick me girl, but it's like she is dependent on the male gaze and wants to perform accordingly, and also self-censor. It's really anxious, it's really dependent, and it really submits to the male gaze. Whereas the hypermasculine is really independent, but like the main concept of like what ties these two categories together, even if they're really far away, they actually aren't, because like this graph should be seen more like here, and then like it keeps going. So like here we will find again hyper. It's like it continues forth and not like forever. So actually these two categories are closer than what can be seen by this position. So if we were more accurate, it would be like this. So like this could be seen as the stereotypical heterosexual relationship, so like hyper masculinity with hyper femininity, because they're both formed on performance. So they're both neglecting and abandoning traits of themselves in order to perform this expectation properly. Whereas I want to concentrate more around this overlap. Okay, so now things get a little bit harder to explain. So femininity is it's more about the internal world. Okay, so like one who's able to look inward and see the chaos and the devastation, or maybe like even empathy, and it's in their feels, but also abandons to the chaos. You know, like it doesn't want it yields to the strength of chaos. Like it abandons its form and surrenders to the chaos. Like it doesn't expect for the chaos to make sense. Okay, so it's like they look at the void and they kind of collapse. Like their sense of self is more prone to dissolving in front of the void, because it's more about merging and more about interdependence, and like more, it's like it's more prone to merging with totality, and like their sense of self is less entitled. Like they feel less entitled to assert their form, because they're more prone to dissolving and to surrendering. But wait, this is on a philosophical level, so it's not about relationship. Like femininity is not about surrendering to man, it's about surrendering to a higher force. Like it doesn't pretend to hold control over chaos. It's like it's almost more primal. It's a more primal form of humanity that just yields and surrenders and just gives gives up, but it's like their ego didn't didn't get to a stage where they felt more entitled in respect to nature. This is always on a philosophical level, on a more ideological level. Whereas in relationships, or like in relation between human beings, they are more feminists. Like, they don't construct their sense of self in respect to maleness, um, but with this feminine archetype. So more prone to embodiment, but embodiment as my body as a part of nature. So always about merging and dissolving the difference between you and the outer world. Okay. So like the image should be the void and then this person, and it's like the sense of self of this person dissolves, and it can be seen as something positive or negative depending on your point of view, because on the one hand it dissolves because it wants to belong to, like it wants to dissolve their sense of individuality to merge with totality and just surrender to this higher force. But on the other hand, they are dissolving their sense of self. So it depends on what you concentrate on. I don't know. Okay. Then masculinity is the fantasy of containment that patriarchy sells us. And I say fantasy because this is my imagined desire. So it's all about illusion and the package that patriarchy sold to me. It doesn't reflect the realities of bodies and personalities. So it's like masculinity is the illusion of containment, the illusion of someone that looks into the void, but that maybe this could not be an illusion. I don't know, but like someone who can look at the void and feel its pull, but still holding itself together. Like they don't dissolve their sense of self to merge with totality. And like, that's what I mean by the illusion of containment, because it's like they give you a shape or maybe an axis around which you can orbit, and it's like it's something fixed around your chaos. Or like sometimes I even see this as a stage or like a platform that is fixed, and on it there's the choreography. On it there's the performance. This connects beautifully to what I'm going to say later on. So it's like masculinity is the stage, it's the platform, and femininity is the choreography, it's the artistry. You know, did you get the metaphor? Great. Cool. So now let's get into concepts like self-concept, ideal ego, and the otherness I desire. So my self-concept is basically what I think I am inside the system. Like, where do I think I am? And what I feel entitled to embody, and what I feel more closer to. So what I allow myself to be, literally, like this is the definition, what I allow myself to be, and what qualities I feel like are coherent with the narrative that I tell myself constantly. Then we have my ideal ego. So what can be found in the intersection between femininity and masculinity that are called the overlap. So this point right here, this dot right here. So the ideal ego is the personification of those traits that you feel like you could embody. Like it's traits that maybe you repressed in yourself from either of the categories. It could be even like something from femininity or something from masculinity that you actually wanted to embody, but maybe were suppressed, or maybe it was hurt and you were told that you weren't allowed to embody this characteristic on your own, when you actually wanted to feel that you felt a pull toward this trait that could be, I don't know, confidence or self-assertion. So you felt this pull, and because you wanted to embody that sensation, but you felt like you weren't entitled to, like you didn't have permission to behave in that way. Okay. Then we have the otherness that I desire, that it's something that I long for, but I don't want to embody. So it's otherness. It's something that it's different from me. It's something that I don't want to be, but it's something that still attracts me. This is the most difficult to articulate, because the line between these three concepts is quite thin, especially between the ideal ego and the otherness I desire. Like the line between these two concepts is really, really, really thin. And how can we tell them apart? It's like you should ask, if I were like this other person, would it be completely incoherent with what I am? Or maybe would I still feel like myself, or would I feel like I'm throwing behind certain traits that I want to still have in me? Because when it's ideal ego, it's like when I think about how this person would behave, how my ideal ego would behave, that it's a person in real life, but it's actually a personification of my ideal ego. And I'm like, how would my ideal ego behave? And what I would find in that imagination would be my ideal way that I expect from myself to have. So a really plain example could be, maybe I'm on a bus, and I'm sitting, and then an old man comes in, and I don't know what to do in that situation because I'm so comfortable in that seat. So I imagine, what would this imagined version of this person, this personification of my ideal ego, do? What would it do? And I picture him instead of me that stands up and let the old man sit on the bus. So actually, that trait is what I want to embody. It's one of my core values that I want to pursue, but maybe because of laziness, or maybe I don't, whatever reason, I'm not doing. So you can ask yourself, what would this person do? And would I admire this action from this imagined version? If yes, then that's your ideal ego, and you should follow up that imagination. Like you should do what you imagine them doing. So by doing this, you thinner the line between your self-concept and your ideal ego, so that you can integrate that part of you. So maybe the moral one, maybe you're really drawn to morality and you want to be a moral being and you value morality. So that's why that imagination popped up. So just do it and embody the trait. Like, don't let the imagined version of your ideal ego just be there because it makes you lazy, because it's comfortable to have that fantasy to be there still, and you don't have to do anything, you don't have to change yourself. Like, that's really comfortable, that's really convenient, but that's not what we want. We want to change, because we are dynamic. So what you're supposed to do, think about how this imagined version of yourself will act and try to act accordingly. So if this imagination leads to something you admire, it's your ideal ego. If it's something that you're like, what the or maybe the imagination just doesn't spark, then it might be the otherness you desire. And that's quite difficult. That's quite difficult because, okay, now I'll explain what I desire, what I feel toward these people. So it's like, my ego ideal is like the most intoxicating one, and the thing I obsess more over. Like, it's almost pathologizing, and like he rips your head apart. Like, you can't think about anything else because it's about you. It's about you. Like, you are at stake. Your identity is at stake in this moment because it's still about you. Like, it's still about the cycle you live in. Like, you conceptualize yourself to be in. So like, this fucking dot, it's so important because it's still you. Okay? So like, I drew these two lines from the self-concept, and one goes to the ego ideal and the other goes to the otherness that I desire, because sometimes it can be simultaneous. But wait, so like, when it's attraction toward your ideal ego, it can feel intoxicated, it can feel pathologic, it can feel like it's a pathology, it's an illness, it's something that you can't live with, that you fucking can't live with it. And when the line gets thinner between you and your self-concept, you have to build your defenses, because I experienced when the possibility got closer, like the fantasy kind of broke, like the distance between the imaginary order and reality kind of broke, like the distance kind of broke, and actually, in order for you to survive, that has to remain imagined. Okay, so do you actually want a relationship with this person? I would say no. Like, this person is a prop to your drama, to your internal drama, and that person is necessary for your psyche to embody a certain trait of you. So when the line between the imaginary and reality kind of dissolves, it dismantles multiple things at once. So it dismantles your inner narrative, like the safety of fantasy, because you can control it and do whatever you want with it, because it's you that commands and it's your props and you can move them around like you want and believe that they are whatever you want, like you own the narrative. So when this line gets dissolved or maybe like thins out, you're like, fuck, it gets to unpredictability. And when you tied your fucking identity around that fantasy, and it becomes unpredictable because it becomes more real, like, that's too much at stake. Like, that bitch has to remain imagined. Like, that bitch can't go down. You have to hold it up, and it doesn't, it must not be real, because the stakes are too high, because your identity is at stake. Like, that person you're imagining, the personification of your ideal ego, is you. Like, it's a part of you that you admire and idealize, and you want to thin your distance between from between you and the other person, but it's still in the ideal realm. Like, don't bring it to reality, because like that's too much at stake. So, oh my god, my nose. I'm sorry. Okay, so then I said that the attraction can flow in two ways simultaneously. So toward your ideal ego and toward the otherness you desire. And it can happen maybe with the same person, because this person, I don't know. I don't like the otherness I desire. It's creates a wider type of desire. Like, maybe with the ideal ego, it being, like I said, a fantasy, when it comes to sex, it can feel disgusting or awkward, or like something you don't want to pursue, because, as I said, it breaks the ground between reality and fantasy, because sex is real, is ugly, it is abrupt and raw. So these are not qualities that belong to the imaginary field, okay? So that's why when it's attraction to your ideal ego, it's more romantic, it's more mental, it's more psychological, and it fucks with your brain. Like, you keep thinking about them, and it, like, the emotions are more anxiety like, and like, it feels like anxiety, and it feels like you're about to die. Great. Like, to me personally, it doesn't make me hungry. Like, I don't want to eat, or like, it makes me sick in the stomach, and I'm not hungry anymore. Like, I don't want to eat anymore, and I have to force myself into eating, because it just holds a weight in my body that's so important, and like, the stakes are so high, because there's my identity holding on a thread, and if that thread breaks, I'm fucked up. Okay, so advice: don't put your whole sense of self onto something you can't really control. Maybe make a myth on your own. Like, why do you need to use another person as a prop? Like, maybe make one on your own too. I don't know, but from my personal experience, the feelings that I get are sickening. Like, I have a pit in my stomach, and anxiety just overflows. Okay, so that's what I call more like a romantic attraction, kind of. And then this other arrow, but that goes to the otherness I desire. It's more wild. Like, it's that desire that's more carnal and more immediate. Like, that lives in the body, not in the brain. and it just wants to do and not be mediated by your internal narrative. It just wants to fuck, and it doesn't. Of course, there is still symbolic and structural power at work, which we're going to explain later. But like, it doesn't have to do with your inner narrative of who you are, even if it kind of does. Oh my god, it kind of does. It kind of does though. But I think on a different level, because with the ideal ego, it's more like a version of yourself that you feel disconnected, but also attracted from, because you want to integrate it. You want to break distance between your current version and your ideal version of yourself. And the general idea is that both parties are both yourselves. Like, it's just different versions of yourself. So you're actually dealing with yourself when you're dealing with your ideal ego, and it doesn't have anything to do with the other person. And the feelings, I would say they are more psychological, but they're still embodied. Like, you can feel them in your body, and they're intense as fuck. Like, they're real as fuck. And with the otherness I desire, it's more about sex and passion and wildness. And like, you don't understand anything. I mean, more about transgression, more about like going against the law, that type of stuff, that the wider kind of sex. And it's like this energy that it's more immediate. Oh, another important difference is that the otherness I desire, like the attraction that I feel, is more immediate and more tied to the moment. Like, maybe I'm next to this other person that I feel this sensation toward, and I just go crazy in that moment, and I want to do something necessarily. And whereas the romantic attraction is like, it continues on even if you're not with the other person. You still picture scenarios, you still make up stories, and like make whole scenarios up. Like, you are more of a director, like you're more of a film director, that you're staging your little drama about who you are, and that drama continues on even if you're not with a person, because you actually instrumentalizing that person. You're using them as a prop, not as a person. So because it serves you to be an actor in your internal drama, which continues on without the other person being in your spatial proximity. Great. Whereas the wild desire, it's more immediate. It's with the person next to you, or like physically near, physically close to you, and it's more about otherness. Like, you don't see yourself in the other person. Like, it's not about you, but you still desire them. Like, it's an otherness that you desire. Okay, like, let's make a pause. So, do you remember what I said about the stage and the choreography? That stuff right there. So that's a kind of another graph that is always derived from the other one. Like, the circles are always about the same things, like femininity, masculinity, hyper. So it's about these two types of power that I noticed and separated. So basically, I think that the best metaphor to understand this is sex. So I've always pondered on a certain position, on a certain sex position, which is like when the man sits on something and the receptive person, the woman or whoever, is sitting on them. Okay, so like the man sitting right here, and then you have the woman or the receptive partner that is sitting on them. Okay, this image is particularly mythic to my psyche because it disrupts something. It disrupts the alignment between structural and symbolic power. Let me explain. So first of all, let's explain what these concepts are. So always following the metaphor of the sex position, structural power is who has authority and power, but that's given by the system. Okay, so let's picture a man that penetrates. So he's in the top row. It's like he always has their power given by the system. It's like assured. Like they can't do anything wrong. Whatever they do, they always have the structural power. Like it's something that almost lies underneath everything. It's like the infrastructure. That's why structural power. So whatever they do, in whatever position they are in, they always have it. Like it's a rule. As long as they are the one penetrating, they still hold this structural power. Whatever they might be doing. Like the idea is that whatever they do, they still own it. Like nobody robs them, okay, of it. Whereas the symbolic power must be performed or earned. Symbolic power is maybe who's physically dictating the pace of it, the rhythm, so who's sitting above. And they're the one who maybe is doing the choking, or maybe is doing the pushing, or like who is in charge, like almost objectively in charge of the game right now. But that position can be subverted at any given moment. That's the distinction. That power, that symbolic power, can be overthrown by the other party. Whereas you, as the one who's sitting above, cannot subvert structural power. And this creates a sort of cellular hierarchy, because like these parties are not equal, okay? Because in that moment you are performing symbolic power because you're dictating the pace, you're above it, like you're asserting your body and you're in control, you feel in control of what's happening. But that power can be overthrown really easily. And when that happens is what I'm most terrified of, which is when these two powers align on the same subjects. Which means when the male, like the top party, is doing the pace. So when they hold both structural power and symbolic power. So like they are maybe above you, or like dictating the pace, dominating, and they still have, like they have both powers, but you can't ever hold the same position as them. The only power that's allowed to is symbolic power. Okay, that's the power imbalance. It's like this right that men have, like a top men have, to always be somehow in charge when they're having sex. It's like a guarantee, something that guarantees and certificates their power whenever. Like whatever they do, they still has somewhat power. Whereas women, it depends. They can never have total power on sex if it's with men, because they could perform symbolic power. They could like hold the pace and the rhythm and do the choking and pushing back and maybe even scratching, biting to assert a certain type of control, but it's performative because that position isn't guaranteed by the system. They, as a subject, have to earn it. Like, it's not guaranteed from any external force. So, oh my god. So, like, if you're in this logic, like, if you're understanding what I'm talking about, you can't have sex without higher forces that are, like kind of external but also internal of you. Like, it's like you're having sex with patriarchy because it's still in the relationship. Like, it's still in the sexual intercourse, because it's the one who guarantees the structural power to the other party. Because if there was no patriarchy, there wouldn't exist any structural power. It would be only symbolic power that can be exchanged between the two parties, and that could really well happen, but it's not what I'm attracted to. So it's like I want a sexual intercourse with patriarchy involved. What the fuck? Yeah, like if sex were to happen with only symbolic power, maybe I don't think this could ever happen in a heterosexual relationship, but I think in more queer ones, you can subvert completely and throw patriarchy over the window. Maybe like if you exchange roles, so maybe who does the penetration, who does the whatever lesbians do. Sorry. I think that structural power can be overthrown, like put in the corner, or maybe even like totally exiled. But in a heterosexual relationship, I think that the work is quite harder, So yeah, this is basically it. And I think that the main difference is about the performativity of it. It's like the male party, like as in the top party, has a guarantee that certificates their constant power over the sexual intercourse. So they don't have to perform. Like, they could do it, but they even can't, like, they could even not do it, but they're still in charge somehow. Whereas the other party, maybe the more receptive one, they have to earn it. So this dynamic is inherently hierarchical, and I don't know what I want to get out of it. Like going back to the metaphor of the stage, saying the structural power, it's what gives me the infrastructure onto which I can perform my choreography and my internal drama. Like, I need a platform onto which I can project this fantasy of who I am. Okay, this is why this ties back strangely and weirdly to the ideal ego, but like on different levels. It's like this is even lower. I think that the ideal ego is more about the imagined kind of realm, even though here things are still about who you are and how you're negotiating between higher forces. So I think they kind of operate on different levels. I think this is the deeper one, but there's still a symbolic shade and undertone to it. So yeah, like my personal experience, when these two powers align, and as we already have seen, they can only be aligned in the top party, because the receptive party can have structural power by definition. So these two powers can only be aligned by one party. Okay. And when that happens, I'm terrified, and it's boring, and it kind of makes me dissociate. Like when that happens, like my body became rigid, and like I completely dissociated, like weren't enjoying the moment anymore, because like I was feeling like I didn't have any kind of power. So like the intercourse was structurally completely imbalanced. It's like I enjoy hierarchy, but it's not hierarchy, it's more imbalance. Like, because by definition, desire has to have a kind of fracture onto which it can flow. But when it's like this difference is too large, so like the other person is too on a higher level from where I see myself, then it becomes hierarchy, and I don't enjoy it anymore, because it's structurally rigged. It's like the game is rigged from the beginning. Whereas the mythic position, the one where I'm sitting above, kind of gives me the illusion of having a certain kind of power, not feeling completely powerless over the infinity and, you know, sureness of structural power. It's like the base note. It's like what holds it together. It's like the fundamental thing onto which everything else can be projected onto. But sex can happen even without it, as we can see in certain queer relationships. I say certain, like if your relationship is queer, it doesn't necessarily mean that there is no structural power in the dynamic. Not at all, because like we're not talking about physical bodies, it's all mental, and how the patriarchy interacts with our intimate relationships. So like sex can happen even only with symbolic power, and it can be enjoyable, but I think that I have a personal wound, as a lot of people do, that was caused by the patriarchy. Like I have somewhat interrupted discourse or like matter with patriarchy that I didn't solve yet, but I'm trying to uncover what it is specifically. So yeah, bye.